I'm Miguel Badia, and today we are with the National Society of Black Engineers to discuss diversity, equity, and inclusion at Villanova University. The purpose of this conversation is to make sure that this important dialogue that is happening around our country and around the world is not just a trend, but is actually something that can instill real change, especially at our school. With me, we have our Internal Affairs Director, Ali Weitzman. So to start off, can you all introduce yourselves and explain what is NSBE and what you guys do as an organization?
Sure,
Will
I
anybody?
think I'll start off with that. So I'm Raymond Ogunjimi. I'm a junior, rising junior computer engineering major. I'm the president of NSBE for this academic year. Um, so in terms of what NSBE is, I think I could recite the the official statement of NSBE here, but I don't think that would be very useful, in understanding how we do the things we do. So I think one of the main points of our organization is to provide a platform for Black students to advance themselves, professionally and academically, and prepare themselves for the professional world. So I think it's important that Black students also get a community, that they feel included in, and can advance themselves um, in terms of that.
Yeah, I'll go next. Nicholas Chandler. I'm a rising sophomore, and I'm the membership chair for NSBE. And to go off what Raymond said, NSBE is like a family of people that come together and support each other academically, and try to push each other to excel past graduation in the professional world. We are catered to more specifically Black people and engineers, but we also welcome other minority groups as well. So I think that's also important to mention.
Hi, my name is George Baidoo. Most people just call me Scoobs, or if you like George, you can stick with George. Um, I'm a rising senior, and I'm the public relations chair for NSBE now. And I went to a predominantly Black high school, so there was no other, like there were other minorities, but there was no like white person per se in my entire high school. And one of the things, it was also a engineering high school, and my major there was robotics. So going from a school like that to Villanova, like you tend to think like you no longer have a nest, I guess. Like there's not going to be a lot of people who look like you. There's not going to be it's not something that you're used to. Even like living in Philly, like that environment is drastically different. But Nesby is one of those things where like you recognize right away. So like it's like going to France and finding a McDonald's, or going somewhere and finding a store that you actually know where you're from. While like I've been moved to a whole nother place and I've never had In-N-Out Burger. So like I have to try something new. So Nesby is like that one thing that I could find consistent in both places that I had been. And it was just that safe haven for me. Like I had always been around Black people studying engineering. So it was kind of like the best way for me to now like survive, or like just my den, almost like a place where I knew I could thrive that was the same as where I was coming from. So that's what it means to me.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that. I feel like my next question kind of touches base on what you just said, how this club acts as like a safe haven for you. But how does your organization help students who might otherwise feel marginalized at Villanova, given its demographics? So if anyone else wants to touch base and add to what George has already said.
Sure, I can start off. So I think there's also kind of an aspect of heritage that our organization is trying to establish for Black students. Like sometimes as a Black student you might go into the workforce, or an academic setting, and you might not see too many people that look like you around you, and that could be a really intimidating thing. And I think one thing that at NSBE we might not be able to do is immediately increase the number of Black professionals, in kind of the career setting that you're getting into. But what we can do is, kind of prepare and, connect you with other students that think, similarly to you. So I think that's also definitely a very important aspect.
Those two pretty much like said everything I was going to say, but just a little addition. It's easy to feel like an outcast when you're on a campus where most of the people don't look like you. And being in NSBE, you're surrounded by people that look like you, and it makes you feel like a sense of belonging. and it allows you to gather together, which is really nice.
Thank you for sharing that. So for our next question, do you feel as if NSBE receives the same treatment as other organizations on campus? Or in other words, how do you feel the school values your organization compared to others?
Sure. So I think the in terms of the school and the administration, I think we have great support. I've had a lot of professors that that were very supportive of our club, our organization, and students as well. But I think one interesting thing is that sometimes when some students or professors might not be very supportive, kind of, as a Black student, you might have this mentality that they might automatically not be supportive at all, or that they aren't vocal because they aren't supportive. And that's kind of a problem that we also face. We don't know who's really supportive of our club, and sometimes we can feel like feel a bit judged, I guess. I know I've struggled with this myself. In my first year, I kind of I wouldn't say I was ashamed to be in NSBE, but I didn't feel like this is information that I had to share with everyone. And I think that's definitely something that we need to change as soon as possible, and that we're working very hard on this year. So
I can definitely see how you would feel that way, and hopefully that starts to change with the conversations that are starting to happen. So our next question is, how do you feel your group is perceived by the student body or the school itself? So you kind of touched on that. If you can go more into like the student body and elaborate, that would be great.
Sure. I mean, I guess Nick or George could also share some insight on this. Some personal opinions and experiences. But as I said, I think I've met a lot of students who are very supportive of our club. I definitely need to stress this and say this because I'm very proud. That at Villanova, I guess we kind of represent the future. In terms of where we could get in terms of Black organizations and improving Black students. So I think they're definitely very supportive, but sometimes every once in a while you hear a thing like at Villanova that maybe NSBE offers students opportunities that might not be offered to white students. This kind of idea of Black privilege, which doesn't necessarily exist. This is not always a thing, and definitely not what NSBE is about. And I think we try to be very inclusive, actually. And I think that's also might be another problem, that we might come off to some students as kind of an exclusive club just because of the students we have, just because of the way we kind of operate, and our I guess the majority of our students. And this is something we need to get over, and we need to kind of get white students or other students, no matter what background from, but we need to get them this kind of understanding that NSBE is not about that. It's not anything exclusive. It's not something that should only be offered for Black students, because that's the complete opposite of the idea that NSBE was built on. So I think we definitely need to do a better job in terms of that. But like I said, I think we've already made great progress, and I think I definitely want to mention that because I think it's very important.
Yeah, I agree a lot with what Raymond said, actually. I think when a lot of people hear NSBE, they just hear Black people engineers, and on the basic level, they're just like, okay, I support it, then going about their day. And I don't think they truly realize that it's not about Black people having advantages or more Black people being praised more for going into the engineering field, but it's more about engineering is a field where Black people are underrepresented. And this is a club that kind of caters to making Black people more able to succeed in these type of fields. So I will say that as far as the student body, though, I've never necessarily heard anything negative about NSBE outrightly. I think most people are pretty supportive of the club.
Oh yeah, if I just had to add, I definitely echo the same thing that Nick and Ray was saying. Like as Nick was saying, I could definitely say I haven't heard anyone outright from the student body just say something negative about NSBE. But I think like I think it would be important for people to know that, like, again, as Nick was saying, it's just about us being underrepresented in those areas. And that's why NSBE exists, so that that could particularly grow. And I think another aspect of the club that, like, most people probably aren't aware of is that they know the name, but I don't know if they know the group, if that makes sense. Like, I don't know if they know how many of us are actually in the group, how many of us are actually in the college. So I think it'd be good every now and then to maybe display those numbers, like just for them to see like what it means to be underrepresented. Because if our college is a microcosm of the workforce, then if they're able to see what our numbers look like as a club, then they can understand why it would be important for us to at least be vocal about us being in this major in general.
So, following the recent murder of George Floyd and other tragic instances of police brutality across the country, how have you and your organization at Villanova reflected on the issues of police brutality and racism? And what have you been doing to take action?
I guess I could start on this one as well. I think, this is a very hard question because, this would be, you would never wish something like this to happen. But I am glad about the conversation that it sparked, and I'm kind of, I'm also a little bit disappointed because it took so long for this conversation to kind of spark at Villanova. But, I'm very grateful to you guys for reaching out as well. VTV, it's a great opportunity to talk about things like this, but, I think sometimes it could be a bit hard. So, one thing that NSBE has done is, we've, just like this opportunity that you at VTV gave us, we've had a couple more like this, some opportunities to kind of organize, as an organization, the thoughts of and opinions and feelings of our students and kind of express them. And in terms of that, I think NSBE provides a platform for them to do so, or for all of our students to do so. So I think that's great, and we've definitely made progress in terms of that. I guess I could also answer this, a little bit more individually, which is, less from the perspective of NSBE and more from the perspective of myself, So, I'm extremely saddened by it. But I definitely think that as the, I guess, the Black population in the United States, I think, this is just like for NSBE, it's also a great opportunity. And I think it's starting similar conversations, in an individual level as in, a level or perspective of an organization. So.
I think it's very fortunate that this event had to happen. And I'm seeing, as far as other instances of police brutality and racism in the past, I've never seen so much, I think, outright support for Black lives. Like in the past, it would appear that it'd be mostly Black people just trying to get the agenda pushed forward to see like what's wrong with the nation. And stuff like this isn't new. Like this has been going on the whole time. But I don't know if it's because his murder took place on video or if it was just so horrific and gruesome. But now I'm seeing like people from different countries speaking out on it and acknowledging that Black Lives Matter. So I think in that aspect, it's really beautiful what's going on.
First, I'd definitely like to say rest in peace, George Floyd. Just same name, so I got to show some respect. And secondly, I think the conversation we had about diversity with the college not too long ago, I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago now, where I think a lot of the dean, the person under the dean, a lot of higher people in the School of Engineering were there, and a lot of students were able to get their opinions off from the Black Villanova Instagram page. And I think that was definitely very, very, very needed. And I think more conversations like that is something that we should probably look into. They were talking about IGRs that students should take. I think professors should probably also be forced to at least take an IGR, or just go to a BCS meeting or something, or a NSBE meeting even, to just come and see what it's like, to see what we talk about, just to be in an environment different from the one either they were raised in or now live in. I would definitely say personally, like it's a good and a bad thing. My heart is out for George Floyd and his family. but I am thankful that like these conversations are starting to be had, and I guess it's better late than never. And yeah, I guess when we get to the individual questions, I can share more about what I've done. But I think we're headed in the right place, especially starting with this conversation.
Yes, thank you guys so much for that insight. It really is unfortunate. I do think that, unfortunately, social media, I mean, fortunately, but also unfortunately, took having such a gruesome act of violence and injustice being recorded for something to really, I guess, shock people enough to want to take action, even though, as we know, like, historically, there has been instances that have also been caught on camera and kind of sparked some sort of social movement. But hopefully this isn't just a trend, and we can keep this conversation going through stuff like this and through other means of dialogue, especially on our campus, because especially like you mentioned, the Black Villanova page is really heartbreaking to hear. That's how some people feel like on campus. Of course, not all students of color feel like that, but it's heartbreaking that even one has to feel uncomfortable in the place that they're supposed to call like their second home. So I do hope that the environment of Villanova can start to change, and hopefully that change is consistent and quick. So our next question is more on an individual level. So have you ever experienced or heard of any incidents at Villanova involving racism or where race was an issue?
I guess I could start myself. Actually, I personally haven't experienced anything like this. But you know, I do remember our orientation. One of the first things that I saw at Villanova was you know, an event that one of the other Black clubs organized, and it kind of named some of the things that happened, that could happen, and you know, acted them out. So I think that was one of the you know, it was I guess a really shocking experience. You know, when you come to Villanova and the first thing you see, you know, you expect to be, you know, you expect everything to be all happy and nice, and one of the first thing you see is, oh, you know, some students are feeling, you know, not so good. You know, they're experiencing horrible things, and it could happen to you too. So I think, you know, that really makes you think and, you know, rethink, I guess, of about your perspective on, you know, on Villanova and Villanova community. But you know, to answer the question from my personal perspective, I haven't experienced anything like this. So, and you know, I don't think it would be right for me to speak on any, you know, anyone else's experiences that I've maybe heard of, because you know, you never have any facts to support that. So maybe Nick and George has some more insight on that.
Yeah, I've also never personally experienced, I think, racism or an issue where my race was a problem, but I've definitely heard of other students that were involved in those incidents, and especially on the Black Villanova Instagram page, where it's made more public all the problems that are going on. And I think it's really interesting and saddening that, because I've heard of these incidences in institutions and schools at Philadelphia public high schools also as well. And they're all very similar, the same type of issues that go on. So it just tells me that there is systematic racism in these institutions. And I just think it's really disappointing that the victims of these incidences aren't given any type of justice, and that no repercussions are usually given. But no, I've never experienced anything personally.
Just a question for a minute. Nick, are you from Philly?
Yeah, I am.
Oh, I didn't know. Sorry, I had just a Philly thing. I just had to ask. But back to the question. I could definitely say I've here, whether it be here back in Philly or since I've started going to school, I've definitely had a couple situations with racism. I mean, a lot of times it's either a conversation, whether it be in ACS freshman year, where we're reading a book where there are slaves in it. And our professor asks a very broad question about, has anyone ever felt like out of place? Or has anyone ever been somewhere where they feel like they didn't belong? And a lot of times it's not a direct, I thought the questions were okay, because apart from being Black, I think we've all been nervous or like been excluded out of a situation. But it turns into a point in time where the class is quiet and everyone is looking at me as if I'm the only person who has had this experience. And the professor is also looking at me as well, as if I'm the only person that can answer. So it turns into a situation where you feel like on behalf of everyone there, you now have to speak to 400 years that I didn't live through about a particular problem known as slavery, when I easily could have brought up something else, like I was shy about singing one time and everyone could sing. So why do I have to be excluded and only amounted to that particular point of view when I'm in a classroom? Or when I got my bag searched by public safety, because I used to be really sick my freshman year and I had to carry around like a lot of pills. And one time I had uh, a pill bottle in front of my backpack, and I went outside to speak to a friend, and public safety went into my hall. And I noticed that they stayed on the first floor because I used to sit freshman year of the dorm, Catherine. There's like a front desk area. I just sat there religiously just to greet people. And I noticed that he stayed there the entire time when he was in the building. And then as I'm entering the building, he also exits. I come into the building to find my backpack emptied and my laptop broken and all my papers like scattered. And it takes everything in my friend to make sure that I don't lay hands on this particular officer because my items have been destroyed. And whether it be small infractions like that or things in a classroom with the professor like always picking on me when there's like three other kids in the class with the same name, but I'm the only one who looks like this. So it's been a lot, but I think, like I said, I'm grateful for these conversations, and that one professor who did bully, whether it be women or Black students in that class, is no longer at Villanova. So I think whenever there is like change to happen, maybe it's because it's in the school's name. They definitely try at least to make an effort to push forth for these things. So like I said, I'm just grateful that our voices can be heard and our stories can be told.
Thank you for sharing those experiences. If I might add like a follow-up question, you guys have mentioned the Black Villanova Instagram page a couple of times. And it's in the past couple of weeks, it's really blown up and gotten a lot of attention. What has your reaction been to this page, and why is it so important for students to have this kind of platform?
I definitely want to say it's important because one of the things that, especially going to Villanova, and something that isn't really introduced in my community back in Philly is therapy or counseling. And one thing I've noticed, especially in the counseling office or even in the health center in general, there are not a lot of Black people in there to speak to if you wanted to talk about your concerns and things like that. And there is CASA, but they also only have a limited number of people that you can speak to at a certain point in time. So I think the Black Villanova Instagram is important because if we did have those professionals or more of people of color in those places, it would be easier for us to talk. But I think the Black Villanova Instagram is proof that there is very little amount of spaces where we can talk and where there are people who look like us to hear us talk. So I think it's very important for the school to acknowledge or at least see that, like, it's not that we're not speaking. We don't have anyone like us to speak to or to actually understand our background. So I think those number of people in positions, or at least not even power, just in the counseling center or even in the health center, who are people of color, would help us greatly to at least have those conversations on campus, and instead of kind of out in public with the school in view. But I think it's important that it happened this way because most protests or changes should be done very loudly, and I think this was the loudest way.
So in the recent weeks, we've had a lot of different responses from the school. A lot of times in the forms of long emails or a lot of statements from different departments on campus. Do you feel like there's something concrete that the school can do in order to help the anti-racist movements?
So I think there is. I think there's a lot that the school can do to help marginalized students. No matter what we're talking about. But one thing that I should say is that, a lot of these emails, these were just long emails, like you mentioned. But I think one thing that Villanova did great is that at the end of all of those emails, or most of those emails, if you look at them, the people that sent them, they acknowledge that without taking action, a statement doesn't mean too much. So I think it's so great that's kind of an idea now, and it's some kind of a I guess like a form of an acknowledgement at the end of emails, that people do, because it really is, it really is that way, and that actually helps. So in terms of concrete things that Villanova can do, I'm not sure if I have some facts laid out for you to say, but I think we've had some conversations in the past, in the past weeks that were really focused on kind of naming these things that Villanova could do to help. So I think reviewing those is definitely helpful for everyone, and I think that's available everywhere. So and I definitely agree with a lot of those. So for sure.
I want to acknowledge that I've seen like in those emails that Villanova is making some type of effort to survey the racial climate and help correct it. Like I know the College of Engineering is having faculty do training. So I do think that they are trying. I think the best solution that they could possibly do is to listen to students and make action happen when they report these occurrences of racial discrimination. Because when no repercussions are given and nothing happens, people think, okay, I can do whatever I want. Like this isn't an issue, because if I'm not going to get in trouble for it, why would I like not do it? I think when Villanova makes it apparent that this behavior will not be tolerated, it won't be seen as much. So I think that's the best thing Villanova can do.
Yeah, I just second what Nick was saying. Just listen to the students more. They've shown that they can act, especially with this diversity committee. So hopefully we see more change come along other than just that. Like hopefully it's a rolling thing and not a one-time thing. Okay,
so moving on from that, my next question is, I know we already touched base on this because we asked you to share any instances you guys have faced regarding being Black at Villanova, and a lot of you, didn't want to, you had some instances but didn't have much to elaborate on. We have another question. I'm not sure if anyone can add to this, but have you ever noticed differing treatment between yourself and a non-student of color that this could be in regards to law enforcement, public safety, Villanova faculty itself, the student body? Of course, George, we heard your really disturbing story already with public safety, which is totally unacceptable. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add, or we could move on from that question.
I think there's just one short thing that I want to add is that, even though I haven't experienced racism or anything similar at Villanova, but I have experienced kind of uncomfortable situations in the classroom because of how underrepresented Black students can be sometimes. So I mean, sometimes we don't have any other, Black other students around us, in the classroom, and I think that alone can be enough to kind of make us feel a bit uncomfortable because it's a bit harder to speak in an environment where there's no one that looks like you. So that's definitely a problem. And another thing is that even though I haven't had any Black professors in my department, I can say that a lot of the professors that I did have, and worked really close with, and students as well, they're actually very committed to not only, I guess, go against this, racism, but definitely very committed to make students feel comfortable, no matter what in the classroom. So I think that is great. And, I think that's also worth, saying, putting out there.
Although the circumstances are difficult at the moment, has anybody here been involved in the protests at large or any other forms of activism? And if so, we'd love to hear your experience.
So I haven't been at any actual protests, namely because my mother thinks it's not safe, and she's definitely right. All the like tear gassing and stuff going on, it's definitely not safe, but it's definitely important. What I have been doing though, I've been making a big effort to sign petitions, and I try to donate money here and there to different charities to help in any way that I can. and also posting information on my Instagram account. You know, just trying to help in the ways that I can in my current situation.
I could definitely second Nick. I can't be in any other. I would like to. I can't, just because, like I said before, I used to be really sick, and my immune system isn't one that can fight corona off at the moment, even at my young age. So I can't really participate in that way. But yeah, just the things that he was saying, like calling the attorneys that handle Breonna Taylor's case. I've written those letters and sent them to Kentucky. I've been signing petitions, donating money, and kind of really pushing this Black-owned businesses, really. A friend of mine, we started a graphic design company, so a lot of the logos you see on certain melanin apparel shirts we kind of made. So like, just any way we can push that along, we try to.
Wow, that's really awesome. Do you want to shout out your company? Your
Oh
company?
yeah. Oh, hold on. We have a spiel. Right now I'm working on wedding invitations, but we're TeamMADE. You can go to TeamMADE on Instagram. Definitely look us up. We do shirts, flyers, logos, websites, app design, whatever you need, really.
Link in
Wow,
the
that's
description.
Yeah.
Yeah, just like to be involved in the conversation. It's hard to go to a protest during like a pandemic. And
Yeah.
it's really great for those people that, because obviously it's a cause worth risking
Yeah.
that for, depending on, your state of your health. I definitely agree with, education via social media. It's amazing how much you can learn just by going on an app and other forms of activism. So yeah, that's really great. The next question is, do you feel as if Villanova's demographics prevent it from being a more accessible school to minority groups or being able to effectively act on these current issues?
I think it's definitely more challenging at Villanova because of its demographics, but I think, I think we still will make progress in terms of that as well. So there's something short to that there. Also, really well said in the last question. Cause worth risking.
Since, Villanova is mostly a white institution, I don't think that most of the students can relate to the issues of minority students just because they've never been in those situations. And for those that have come from towns and cities where it's always been mostly white, they've never experienced some of the issues that some minority students have experienced. So I think it is going to be a little more difficult for them to understand, but it's also all of our jobs to make Villanova a more progressive school. So, yeah.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I feel that the demographic, like, I think there's a reason why I think they named Dr. Nance the vice president. And I feel like we've seen Dr. Nance do a lot of things, and there's nothing wrong with that. It's just that if you only draw upon that same person every single time, especially, it starts to show that we don't have as many people that we can even put forward for that position. And I think, like Nick was saying, like, there aren't too many of us for them to like if they want to make a change and they talk amongst themselves, there may be only one of us in that room to really impact the ideas. So I think the more of us there is, the better you can tackle a topic that you really haven't faced, or more perspectives to add to something that you haven't heard before. So it definitely makes it a little challenging.
So last time we talked about was like wanting more representation within faculty, for students to have a place to voice their stories, and so that there could be more representation within the school itself, which obviously makes a lot of sense. And about allyship, I think apathy is a real issue because people don't think it affects them, so they don't feel as fueled by this. They don't feel as passionate about it. But I feel like we all agree that we want Villanova to be a place that we can be proud of. And that's just not the efforts of the students of color on campus or Black students on campus. That's everyone having to take a part in this. So just for our last question, tying this in, what are some steps the university community, such as students on an individual level, organizations, etc., can take to ensure a more inclusive environment?
It's a great question. So I think, sometimes you don't know with certain students when if they're whether or not they're supportive of this whole movement and everything that's happening right now, because sometimes when you're not vocal about kind of being supportive, you're actually just kind of hiding, and that's not necessarily supportive. And sometimes we can feel judged too. So I think one great thing that anyone at Villanova can do is kind of just understand, first of all, the clubs, such as NSBE, and also to kind of support it vocally, and when they talk about it, kind of say something that it's, yeah, I've heard of that, and this and that, not just I've heard of NSBE, just kind of end the conversation there, because that's all we know about it. So I think that's definitely something that we could do.
Let's see. I mean, going to Villanova, I feel like there's always going to be a sense of not feeling included, just because in a lot of my classes, I'm the only Black student. So I think in that aspect, there's always going to be a sense of feeling like not necessarily an outcast, but just noticing that I look different than everyone else here. But I do think, like Raymond said, with the school being vocal as a whole, is a way that Villanova can be more inclusive, just feeling as if they support me being here. And I've heard this a couple of times, especially with the rallies and everything going on about affirmative action, and that being the only reason that some Black students can go to schools like Villanova. Just dispelling that myth and being more supportive of Black students being here and Villanova being vocal about that, I think is how the school can be more inclusive as a whole.
Yeah, I definitely second all of those. I think like you started off with having more, other than like faculty, as in all of them, whether it be teachers, help center people, counselors, people in the writing center, people in the maths, all of those places should have a greater sense of diversity. Just because, like, from what I can tell, the first thing that I noticed was like when I first started going to Villanova was like, oh, like all the Black people that I'm going to see work at the school are always in the dining hall. And like that's one opinion of this place that I could walk away with, when the school could easily change that into like, oh, let me see us in different places other than just this, because you have to see yourself there in order to really envision it. And like outliers are fine, they just are the way makers. So we just need more of that. Another thing I definitely would say is that, like I said, just having our professors and other things more in our environment. So I would say, like, I know we do day of service, but one thing I would definitely try and critique is like the places that we do day of service. So like I know people who have gone to day of service, and their opinion of Philly per se is that it's really dirty, or it's this, or it's that. I would want people that actually take time to go into the neighborhoods or places that tend to really need the help, like see different sections of Philly that they aren't familiar with. And I would like professors and faculty to do the same thing, but not on that scale. More of a, if students can always tour Villanova, I think my professor should be allowed to tour where I went to high school in Philly, or tour where I went to middle school in Philly, just to see the product of where we are coming from. Because I think you don't really feel it until you've roamed there. Like, I think it would be shocking for someone to go back to my middle school and see that, like, I never took math, science, or English until I got to high school. So like, you go back to this environment, you see, and this is in America, this isn't somewhere. And like, when you go back and see that environment, see that establishment, you have a greater respect for how that person got to this destination. So I think one of those things should be field trips, like real life IGRs, where like, this is what they're seeing. Like, they're seeing this kid who will one day go there, but at their starting point. And I think more things like that, like just putting them in our world, at least just for a couple minutes or for a couple hours. So I think the closer we can get that wall to be broken down, the more humanizing they can see us struggle, the more they can see us and understand that, like, for us it is a lot worse. So I definitely will push that. There's more excursions, and like I said, them going to BCS meetings or NSBE meetings as well.
All right, thank you so much for sharing those ideas. This marks the end of our interview. So to wrap everything up, is there anything else that you would like to share with the school community, or anything that you think the community needs to hear right now?
You know, there's only one thing for me is to keep this conversation going and, you know, be really committed to change and, you know, never stop thinking about this and considering, you know, other people around us.
I'd say two things. First off, I don't want people to think what's going on right now is a push to say that Black people are better than any other race. That's not what's going on. What's going on is Black people have been not privy to the same advantages as other people, and we have been very underrepresented and being at big disadvantages. And what we're trying to do is get to a sense of equity and equality to where Black people can be treated as the same as other races. So I want the Villanova community to understand that, and I also want them to keep fighting because these type of incidences have happened a lot over history, and it's easy just to turn a blind eye to it and no action is taken. So I just want to say keep hope and keep the fight alive so we can see real change happen.
Yeah, I think just one or two things. Just like I said before, rest in peace, George Floyd. Rest in peace, Breonna Taylor. And second thing I definitely would like to say is that just read, honestly, but more like I don't want to, like, there's been a list of books out that people should read that have been pushed, whether it be white privilege, James Baldwin, a bunch of other authors that I think should be introduced into the ACS or theology curriculum. But I think apart from that, like upon that reading, like also like just take time to really see what is going on. I think like this is a moment where like not, again, like he was saying, not Black people all of a sudden are more important than most people. I just think the people who are crying at the moment do deserve more attention. So like I definitely say right now, like if you can, just listen more than you argue. So just keep this listening going.
And also on behalf of NSBE, we're very thankful for this opportunity from you.
Yes, thank you,
It's
guys.
really great.
Yeah, thanks.
Well, thank you guys so much for spending some time with us. We're really grateful to have your participation and to hear your insight. And this was a great meeting. I really hope people watch this and take away a lot from it, because I know just sitting here and interviewing you guys, I took a lot away from it. And I'm really excited to hopefully get more of these videos going and then send them to the faculty from Villanova and kind of get some sort of response, or just so you, as you said, they can listen and hear. And I feel like that's where the biggest change comes from. And I feel like this is a great opportunity for them to have this sort of dialogue within the administration and figure out what they can do to make Villanova an overall better place.
We hope that this interview will help open up more dialogue about racism and other social issues on campus. I'm Miguel Badia with Ali Weitzman, and this is the National Society for Black Engineers. Thank you for listening.